Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the UES Vengeance, watching the stars drift past through the main view screen. The Deep Space Patrol had been quiet for weeks. Too quiet. His crew was getting restless, and he could feel it. In the way they moved around the bridge, the ship hummed softly as it traveled through the dark between star systems. Jake had been captain of the Vengeance for 3 years now. She was a good ship with a good crew. They had seen their share of trouble in the Outer Rim, but nothing like what was coming. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan looked up from her communications station. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her blue eyes showed concern. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors." Jake turned toward her. Kate was the best communications officer he had ever worked with. If she said something was strange, it was worth listening to. "What kind of strange, Kate?" "It's a distress signal, sir. But it's not from any human ship." Kate's fingers moved quickly over her control panel. "The signal is weak and breaking up, but I can make out some words." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Jake stood up from his chair and walked over to Kate's station. "Put it on speakers." Static filled the bridge, mixed with what sounded like crying. Then a voice came through, speaking in accented English. The voice was high and musical, unlike any human voice they had heard before. "Please ... anyone who can hear this ... we need help. The Vorthic came 3 days ago. They are taking our children. They are hurting our people. Our world is burning. Please ... If there is anyone out there who cares about life, help us." The message repeated several times before fading back into static. The bridge crew looked at each other with shocked faces. Jake felt his jaw tighten. He had heard about alien species during his time at the academy, but this was the first distress call from one he had encountered. "Kate, can you get more information about that signal?" Kate worked at her station for several minutes. "I'm trying." "To clean up the signal, Captain. Give me a moment." Her face was pale as she concentrated. "Got it. The signal is coming from a system called Kalara. According to our star charts, it's about 6 days away at maximum speed." Dr. Ryan Torres, the ship's chief medical officer, stepped onto the bridge. He was a tall man with dark hair and kind eyes. He had been listening from the doorway. "Captain, did I hear correctly? Someone is asking for help?" Jake nodded. "Aliens called the Kelani. Someone called the Vorthic is attacking them." He looked around at his crew. "What do we know about these species?" Commander Lisa Wong, the ship's weapons specialist, checked her datapad. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick hands. "The Kelani are listed in our database as peaceful. They're herbivores who developed advanced medical technology. They've never been in a war as far as we know." "And the Vorthic?" Jake asked. Lisa's expression darkened. "Military empire. They conquer other species and use them as slaves. The galactic community considers them dangerous, but they haven't done anything about it." Kate looked up from her station again. "Captain, I'm getting more of the signal. It's bad, sir. Really bad." The speakers crackled to life again. This time the voice was different, younger. "Mama, where are you?" "The big scary ones took Mama away. Someone help us. Please help us." The bridge went silent. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had heard plenty of distress calls in his career, but never from children. Dr. Torres stepped forward. "Captain, we have to do something." Jake knew the regulations. First contact with alien species was supposed to go through Earth Command and the Galactic Council. There were procedures to follow, forms to fill out, committees to consult. All of that would take weeks or months. "Kate, how long would it take to get a message to Earth Command?" "About 2 weeks each way, sir. A month total for orders to come back." Jake looked at the view screen showing the stars ahead. Somewhere out there, children were crying for their parents. Somewhere out there, a peaceful species was being destroyed. While the galaxy's governments talked and debated, he turned to his crew. I want all senior officers in the conference room in 10 minutes. We need to talk. The conference room was small but comfortable. Jake sat at the head of the table with his senior staff around him. Kate had brought a data pad with more information. About the distress call, Dr. Torres sat quietly, but Jake could see the anger in his eyes. Lisa Wang was checking her weapons reports. Ben Carter, the navigation officer, was plotting courses on his tablet. Samantha Brooks, their chief engineer, was reading technical specifications. All right, people. Let's talk about this situation. Jake leaned forward. We've received a distress call from an alien species under attack. By law, we should report this to Earth Command and wait for orders. Dr. Torres shook his head. By the time we get orders, those people will be dead or worse. The doctor's right, Kate said. I've been monitoring the signals. The attacks are getting worse. They're not just conquering the planet. They're doing something horrible to the population. Lisa Wang looked up from her datapad. Captain, I've been reading about the Vorthic. They don't just enslave people. They use them for biological experiments. They harvest organs and tissue for their research. The room fell silent. Jake felt his hands clench into fists. How far is it to their system? Ben Carter answered immediately. 6 days at maximum speed, sir. But Captain, we're just one ship. If the Vorthic have a full invasion force there, we'll be outnumbered. Engineer Brooks spoke up. Our weapons are different from what they're used to fighting, sir. Most galactic species use energy weapons and defensive shields. We use kinetic weapons and explosives. They might not be ready for our kind of fight. Jake looked around the table at his crew. These were good people. They had families back on Earth, lives to return to. He had no right to ask them to risk everything for aliens they had never met. I'm going to be honest with you all. If we respond to this distress call, we'll be disobeying direct orders. Earth Command will not be happy. We could all face court-martial when we get back. Dr. Torres leaned forward. Captain, I didn't become a doctor to sit in space while children are being tortured. Kate nodded. I joined Starfleet to help people, sir. It doesn't matter if they're human or not. One by one, each officer voiced their agreement. They knew the risks, but they also knew what was right. Jake stood up. Then it settled. Ben, plot a course for the Kalara system. Maximum speed. Lisa, I want all weapon systems checked and ready. Samantha, give me everything this ship has. Kate, keep monitoring those signals. I want to know everything we can about what's happening there. As his crew filed out to prepare for the journey, Jake remained in the conference room. He activated the ship's communication system and began recording a message. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the U's Vengeance. We have received a distress call from the Kelani homeworld and are responding immediately. By the time you receive this message, we will already be engaged with hostile forces. The galaxy wanted Deathworlders in their club. Today they get to see what that really means. He ended the recording and sent it on a delayed transmission to Earth Command. Then he walked back to the bridge where his crew was already preparing for battle. The stars ahead held danger and death, but also people who needed help. The crew of the Vengeance had made their choice. They were going to war. The UE's Vengeance cut through space at maximum speed, its engines pushing the ship harder than they had ever been pushed before. 3 days had passed since they received the distress call, and the crew worked around the clock to prepare for what lay ahead. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the ship's war room, studying the holographic display that showed the Kalara system. The blue lights of the projection cast shadows on his tired face. He had not slept much since they began this journey. Navigator Ben Carter pointed to several red dots on the display. Captain, were picking up more signals from the system. It looks like the Vorthik brought a lot of ships. Jake counted the dots. Too many. How many are we talking about, Ben? At least 12 heavy cruisers and maybe 40 smaller ships. They have the whole planet surrounded. Ben's voice was quiet. Sir, that's a full invasion fleet. We're just one ship. Jake nodded slowly. The odds were bad, but he had expected that. What about the planet itself? Any signs of life? Kate Sullivan looked up from her communication station. She had been monitoring signals from Kellara for hours. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. The signals are getting weaker, Captain. But I'm still picking up transmissions from the surface. Some of the Kelani are still alive. What are they saying? Kate's hands shook as she adjusted her equipment. They're begging for help, sir. They're talking about their children being taken to the ships. They're saying the Vorthik are doing experiments on them. Dr. Ryan Torres entered the war room carrying a medical tablet. His face was grim. Captain, I've been analyzing the medical data Kate intercepted. The Vorthik aren't just taking prisoners. They're harvesting biological material from living subjects. Jake felt his stomach turn. What kind of biological material? Neural tissue, organs, bone marrow. They're using the Kelani as test subjects. For enhancement drugs. Dr. Torres set down his tablet. Captain, what they're doing is torture. Pure and simple. Commander Lisa Wong joined them, her weapons report in hand. I have some good news and some bad news. The bad news is that the Vorthik fleet has enough firepower to destroy 100 ships our size. And the good news? Lisa smiled grimly. They've never fought humans before. Their ships are designed to handle energy weapons and particle beams. Our kinetic weapons will punch right through their shields. Engineer Samantha Brooks entered the room, her coveralls stained with grease. She had been working on the ship's weapon systems for the past 2 days. Captain, I've finished the modifications. Our railguns are now firing at 90% of light speed. Their shields won't even slow down our rounds. Jake looked around at his crew. They were tired, scared, and facing impossible odds, but they were also determined. What about our nuclear weapons? Samantha's grin was fierce. I've adapted our warheads for space combat. Instead of one big explosion, they'll fragment into thousands of armor-piercing rounds. It's like turning a nuclear bomb into the galaxy's biggest shotgun. The Vorthik won't know what hit them, Lisa added. Galactic warfare is usually very polite. Ships fire at each other from long range with energy weapons. When shields fail, the losing side surrenders. Nobody uses kinetic weapons or nuclear bombs. Ben Carter looked up from his navigation console. Captain, we're getting close. To the system. We'll be there in about 6 hours. Jake made his decision. All right, people. Here's what we're going to do. We're not going to announce ourselves. We're not going to demand surrender. We're going to drop out of hyperspace and start shooting. Doctor. Torres raised an eyebrow. That's not exactly standard procedure, Captain. Standard procedure is what got those people into this mess, Jake replied. The galactic community has procedures for everything. Committees and councils and diplomatic protocols. Meanwhile, children are dying. Kate's communication system chimed. She listened to her earpiece for a moment, then looked up with tears in her eyes. Captain, I just intercepted a Vorthik transmission. They're discussing their next target after they finish with the Kelani. What's the target? Earth, sir. They're planning to invade our solar system within the year. They want to study human biology because we're from a death world. The room fell silent. Jake felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. These aliens were not just threatening the Kelani. They were planning to attack Earth, to do to human children what they were doing to the Kelani children. Lisa, I want every weapon on this ship ready to fire. Ben, Plot an attack course that brings us in fast and low. Samantha, I want the engines ready to give us everything they have. Yes, sir, they replied in unison. Jake activated the ship's intercom system. All hands, this is the captain. In 5 hours, we will engage a superior enemy force. They outnumber us 40-1. They have more firepower, more ships, and more experience. He paused, looking around at his senior staff. But they've never fought humans before. They don't know that we come from a world where everything tries to kill us. They don't know that we learned to fight by battling monsters in our own backyard. The intercom carried his voice to every corner of the ship. The Vorthic think they can torture innocent people while the galaxy looks the other way. They think they can plan attacks on Earth while we follow diplomatic protocols. They're about to learn that humans don't negotiate with monsters. Jake's voice grew harder. Check your weapons. Say your prayers. In 5 hours, we show them what Deathworlders really are. As the crew prepared for battle, Kate continued monitoring transmissions from the Kalara system. The Vorthic communications were full of confidence. They talked about dividing the Kelani population among their research facilities. They discussed the profits they would make from selling biological samples to other species. Captain Kate called out, "You need to hear this." She played a recording of a Vorthic commander talking to his fleet. The alien's voice was cold and mechanical through the translation system. The harvest is proceeding ahead of schedule. The Kelani are excellent subjects. Their neural tissue is particularly valuable. We should have enough material to supply. Our buyers for years. Another voice responded. What about the Galactic Council? Won't they object to our methods? The first voice laughed. The Council species are our best customers. They buy our research data and biological samples while pretending to disapprove of our methods. They get to feel morally superior while benefiting from our work. Jake's hands clenched into fists. The galaxy's leaders were not just ignoring the Vorthic crimes. They were profiting from them. Captain, Dr. Torres said quietly, those children we heard crying for help. They're being used as test subjects while the galaxy's governments buy the results of the experiments. Lisa Wong checked her weapons one. More time. Captain, when we engage the enemy, are we taking prisoners? Jake looked at the holographic display showing the Vorthic fleet surrounding the burning planet. He thought about the children crying for their parents. He thought about the galactic leaders who bought torture data while pretending to be civilized. Commander Wang, let me be very clear about our rules of engagement. The Vorthic came to harvest, a peaceful species for their experiments. We came from a world where we learned to fight monsters. There will be no prisoners. The bridge crew nodded. They understood. This was not going to be a polite galactic war with energy shields and surrender. Protocols. This was going to be a human war. Brutal and final. As the Vengeance approached the Kalara system, Jake recorded one final message to Earth Command. The galaxy wanted Deathworlders in their galactic community. They're about to learn what that really means. We don't negotiate with monsters. We kill them. The ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, and Jake saw the burning planet ahead. It was time to show the galaxy what humans did to those who hurt children. The U's Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kalara system, and Captain Jake Morrison felt his blood turn to ice. The beautiful blue-green planet that should have been a peaceful garden world was burning. Orange fires covered entire continents, and dark smoke rose into the atmosphere. My God, whispered Dr. Ryan Torres from behind Jake's command chair. What have they done? Navigator Ben Carter checked his sensors. Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. They're strip mining the cities. Jake watched the main view screen as it zoomed in on Kalara Prime. Huge Vorthic ships hung in the planet's atmosphere like metal vultures, their harvesting beams cutting into the surface. Smaller ships moved back and forth between the planet and the larger vessels, carrying cargo that Jake knew were living Kelani prisoners. Kate, any signals from the surface? Communications Officer Kate Sullivan worked at her station with shaking hands. Yes, sir. Weak transmissions from underground shelters. The Kelani are hiding in caves and basements. They're still calling for help. Commander Lisa Wang stood at her weapons station, her face hard as stone. Captain, I count 12 heavy cruisers and 43 support vessels. They have the planet completely surrounded. Jake studied the enemy formation. The Vorthic ships were arranged in a perfect grid around the planet, like a net designed to catch any ship trying to escape. It was a textbook invasion formation, efficient and deadly. They're not expecting a fight, Jake realized. Look at their positioning. They're focused on the planet, not on watching for incoming ships. Engineer Samantha Brooks called out from her station. All weapons are ready, Captain. Railguns are charged and targeting systems are online. Nuclear warheads are armed and ready. Jake felt the familiar calm that came before battle. His crew was ready. His ship was ready. The enemy had no idea what was about to hit them. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. Red lights flashed throughout the ship as the crew prepared for combat. Jake had trained for this moment his entire career, but he had never imagined his first major battle would be against alien invaders torturing children. Ben, take us in fast and low. Lisa, target the nearest cruiser. Samantha, I want everything we have. The Vengeance accelerated toward the Vorthic fleet at maximum speed. Jake could see the moment when the alien sensors detected them. The enemy ships began to turn toward the incoming human vessel, but they moved slowly, like they had all the time in the world. They're hailing us, Captain, Kate reported. Ignore them, Jake ordered. Lisa, fire when ready. The first Vorthic cruiser was still turning to face them when the Vengeance opened fire. 3 railgun rounds traveling at 90% of light speed slammed into the alien ship's hull. The kinetic weapons punched through the energy shields like they were not even there. The Vorthic cruiser broke apart in a shower of metal and fire. Atmosphere vented from the hull breaches, and secondary explosions tore through the ship's interior. Within seconds, the massive vessel was a cloud of wreckage drifting in space. Direct hit, Lisa reported with satisfaction. Their shields couldn't stop solid projectiles. The Vorthic fleet reacted with confusion. They had been expecting energy weapons that their shields could deflect. Instead, they faced kinetic rounds that tore through their defenses like paper. Second target, dead ahead, Jake called out. Another Vorthic cruiser tried to bring its weapons to bear on the Vengeance, but Samantha Brooks had prepared a special surprise. She fired one of her modified nuclear warheads, and the weapon detonated just short of the enemy ship. Instead of a single explosion, the warhead fragmented into thousands of armor-piercing rounds that spread out like a shotgun blast. The Vorthic cruiser was caught in a storm of metal fragments moving at incredible speed. Its hull was shredded, and the ship died in a ball of fire. 2 down, Lisa announced. They're starting to return fire. Energy beams lanced out from the remaining Vorthic ships, but the Vengeance was moving too fast and changing direction too quickly. The alien weapons were designed for the slow, predictable battles of galactic warfare, not for the wild maneuvering of human combat tactics. Ben, evasive maneuvers. Keep us moving, Jake ordered. The Vengeance twisted and rolled through space, dodging energy beams while continuing to fire its railguns. Each shot found its target, and each hit destroyed or crippled a Vorthic vessel. Captain, Kate called out urgently. I'm intercepting Vorthic communications. They're panicking. They've never seen weapons like ours before. Jake could hear the fear in the alien voices as Kate played the intercepted transmissions. The Vorthic commanders were shouting orders, demanding to know what kind of weapons the humans were using. Third target locked, Lisa reported. This time, the Vengeance used electromagnetic pulse weapons. Instead of destroying the enemy ship, the EMP blast disabled all of its systems. The Vorthic cruiser went dark, floating helplessly in space. Boarding party, prepare for action, Jake announced. Commander Wang led a team of Marines to the disabled ship. They moved through the airlock wearing full combat armor and carrying kinetic weapons that would horrify any civilized galactic species. What they found inside the Vorthic ship made them understand why humans were called Deathworlders, the alien. Crew had been torturing Kelani prisoners, conducting experiments that violated every law of warfare Jake had ever learned. Captain, Wang's voice came through the COM system. You need to see this. The Kelani prisoners. What they've done to them. Jake felt rage build in his chest as Wang described the conditions inside the enemy ship. The Vorthic had been using living Kelani as test subjects, cutting into them while they were still conscious, harvesting their organs for research. No prisoners, Jake ordered. Secure the Kelani survivors and make sure no Vorthic escapes. The battle continued for 2 hours. The Vengeance moved through the enemy fleet like a shark among minnows, destroying ship after ship with weapons the Vorthic could not understand or counter. Some of the alien vessels tried to flee, but Ben Carter anticipated their escape routes. The Vengeance cut them off, trapping them between the planet and the incoming railgun fire. By the end of the engagement, 11 Vorthic cruisers had been destroyed or disabled. Dozens of support ships drifted in space as burning wreckage. The survivors huddled around the flagship, a massive vessel that had been trying to coordinate the defense. Captain, Kate reported, the Vorthic flagship is trying to surrender. They're offering to negotiate. Jake looked at the view screen showing the burning planet below. He thought about the Kelani children crying for their parents. He thought about the torture chambers his Marines had found on the enemy ships. Lisa, target the flagship. All remaining weapons. Sir, they're trying to surrender, Kate repeated. Jake's voice was cold as space itself. They came here to torture children. They plan to do the same thing to Earth. There will be no surrender. The Vengeance opened fire with everything it had. Railgun rounds and nuclear warheads slammed into the Vorthic flagship, overwhelming its defenses. The massive ship broke apart under the assault, its hull cracking like an egg, but the flagship was not destroyed completely. It was damaged and helpless, drifting in space with its crew trapped inside. Jake knew what he had to do. Prepare for ramming speed, he ordered. Captain, no, Dr. Torres protested. That's suicide. Jake looked around. At his crew, they had followed him this far, trusted him to make the right choices. Now he was asking them to die with him. We came here to stop monsters, Jake said quietly. We're going to finish the job. The Vengeance accelerated toward the crippled flagship, its engines pushed beyond their limits. Jake could see the fear in the alien faces through the view screen. As they realized what the humans were planning, the two ships collided in a shower of sparks and metal. The Vengeance's reinforced hull punched through the flagship's weakened armor, and the crews of both vessels prepared for the final battle. Jake drew his sidearm and looked at his crew. They were ready to follow him into hell itself. Let's finish this. The UE's Vengeance shuddered as it tore through the hull of the Vorthic flagship. Metal screamed against metal, and sparks flew through the corridors as the two ships became locked together in a deadly embrace. Captain Jake Morrison picked himself up from the floor of the bridge, blood running from a cut on his forehead. Damage report, he called out as emergency lights bathed the bridge and Red Dot engineer Samantha Brooks checked her systems. Hull breach on decks 3 and 4, but we're holding together. Main engines are offline, but we have power. Jake looked at the twisted metal that had once been the main view screen. Through a jagged hole in the ship's hull, he could see into the Vorthic flagship. Alien figures moved in the shadows, and he could hear shouting in their strange language. Lisa, get your Marines ready. Kate, try to establish communications with any surviving Kelani on that ship. Dr. Torres, prepare for casualties. Commander Lisa Wang gathered her boarding party at the breach point. They wore full combat armor and carried weapons that would make any civilized galactic species horrified. Shotguns, assault rifles, and explosives were not part of normal space. Warfare. Remember, Jake told the boarding party, we're here to rescue prisoners and gather intelligence. No Vorthic gets off this ship alive. The Marines moved through the breach into the enemy vessel. The Vorthic ship was larger than anything they had ever seen, with corridors wide enough for 3 humans to walk side by side. Strange blue lights cast eerie shadows on the walls. Dr. Torres followed close behind with his medical team. Within minutes, they found the first group of Kelani prisoners. The sight made the human doctor sick to his stomach. The aliens were kept in small cages, barely large enough for them to sit down. Many showed signs of surgical procedures performed without anesthesia. Some were missing limbs or organs. All of them were terrified when they saw the armed humans approaching. It's okay, Dr. Torres said softly, even though he knew they could not understand him. We are here to help. Kate Sullivan had managed to link her communication system to the ship's translation computers. Doctor, I can translate for you now. Tell them we're friends, Torres said as he began examining the injured Kelani. Tell them we're here to rescue them. Meanwhile, Jake and Lisa pushed deeper into the ship, looking for the command center. They found it guarded by a squad of Vorthic soldiers. The aliens were tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. They carried energy weapons that hummed with power. The Vorthic opened fire first, but their energy beams were designed to stun rather than kill. Galactic warfare was usually about capturing ships and crews, not destroying them. The humans had no such limitations. Lisa's Marines returned fire with kinetic weapons. The sound of gunfire echoed through the corridors as the Vorthic soldiers fell. Within minutes, the way to the command center was clear. Jake stepped over the bodies of the alien guards and entered the flagship's bridge. It was a circular room with control stations arranged around a central command chair. In that chair sat the largest Vorthic Jake had ever seen. Supreme Commander Zithik was almost 8 feet tall, with ceremonial scars covering his gray skin. His black eyes studied Jake with curiosity rather than fear. So, Zithik said in perfect English, "You are the Deathworlders we have heard about. You fight like the savages we expected." Jake kept his weapon pointed at the alien commander. "We fight to protect innocent people, something you wouldn't understand." Zithik laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Innocent? The Kelani are resources, nothing more. Their biological material advances science throughout the galaxy. Their suffering serves the greater good." The greater good? Jake felt his anger rising. "You're torturing children. Children grow into adults. Adults can be taught to work. But children provide the purest biological samples." Zithik seemed proud of his logic. The galactic community understands this. They buy our research data and biological materials while pretending to disapprove. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What are you talking about?" Zithik activated a holographic display that showed financial records. "The Altarian Republic purchases our neural enhancement serums. The Centauri Federation buys our organ cultivation techniques. The Rigel Collective pays handsomely for our pain resistance research." The display showed dozens of transactions between the Vorthic Dominion and supposedly civilized galactic species. They were all buying the results of torture and murder while maintaining their moral superiority. Your own species will join them soon, Zethik continued. Earth has been selected as our next harvesting ground. Human biology is particularly interesting because of your Deathworld origins. Jake's finger tightened on his weapon's trigger. That's not going to happen. Of course it is. You destroyed my fleet, but the Dominion has hundreds of fleets. We will return with overwhelming force. Your planet will burn, and your children will scream in our laboratories. Behind Jake, Dr. Torres entered the command center with Kate Sullivan. They had heard the conversation through the comm system. Captain, Torres said quietly, I've found the medical records. The Vorthik have been conducting these harvesting operations for over 200 years. Dozens of species have been completely wiped out. Kate connected her equipment to the ship's computer systems. I'm downloading everything, sir. Financial records, communication logs, research data. The galaxy needs to see what's really been happening. Zithik watched their activities with amusement. You think exposing our operations will matter? The galactic species need what we provide. They will forgive any methods if the results benefit them. Jake looked at the alien commander with disgust. You're wrong. There are still people in this galaxy who believe in doing what's right. Are there? Zithik leaned forward in his chair. Then why did it take Deathworlders to respond to the Kelani distress call? Where were these moral galactic species when the harvest began? The question hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. The alien was right. For 3 days, the Kelani had broadcast their desperate pleas for help. The entire galaxy had heard their cries, but only humans had responded. It doesn't matter, Jake said finally. We're here now. Zithik smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Yes, you are here. And when you return to Earth, you will tell your leaders what you have seen. You will warn them about our plans. But it will not matter. Why? Because your species will do what every species does when faced with our power. You will try to negotiate. You will offer us concessions. You will hope that if you give us what we want, we will leave you alone. Zithik's smile grew wider. They always do. Jake felt something snap inside his chest. This alien creature thought humans would bargain with monsters. He thought they would trade other people's lives for their own safety. You don't know humans very well, Jake said quietly. Don't I? You are mammals, like the Kelani. You feel pain, like the Kelani. You fear death, like the Kelani. You will break, like the Kelani. Jake looked around at his crew. Dr. Torres was still working to save Kelani prisoners. Kate was downloading evidence of galactic crimes. Lisa was securing the ship to make sure no enemies escaped. They had risked everything to help strangers, knowing they might never see home again. The Kelani are herbivores, Jake said, holstering his weapon. They evolved on a peaceful world where nothing tried to eat them. Humans are different. He walked closer to Zithik's command chair. We evolved on a death world. Everything on our planet tried to kill us. We learned to fight by battling. Monsters in our own backyard. Zithik's smile faded slightly. Your point? Jake grabbed the alien commander by the throat and lifted him from his chair. Zithik was tall and strong, but Jake had grown up fighting Earth's gravity and Earth's predators. The Vorthik commander felt as light as a child in his hands. My point is that we know how to deal with monsters, Jake said, as Zithik struggled in his grip. We don't negotiate with them. We don't make deals with them. We kill them. Zithik's eyes went wide with sudden understanding. The human was not going to follow galactic protocols. There would be no prisoner exchanges or peace negotiations. Wait, Zithik gasped. We can make a deal. I can give you information about our fleet positions. I can tell you about our plans for Earth. Jake's grip tightened. I don't make deals with monsters. The alien commander died with fear in his black eyes, finally understanding what it meant to face Deathworlders, who had heard a cry for help and brought fire instead of mercy. 3 weeks after the battle at Kalara Prime, Captain Jake Morrison stood in a sterile white room on Orth Station Alpha. Across from him sat Admiral Rebecca Stone, her face showing the kind of anger that made junior officers hide in supply closets. "Captain Morrison, do you have any idea what you've done?" Admiral Stone's voice was cold enough to freeze water. "You disobeyed direct orders, engaged an alien fleet without authorization, and started what might become an interstellar war." Jake stood at attention, his uniform bearing new scars from the battle. "I responded to a distress call from innocent civilians under attack, Admiral. You violated first contact protocols, ignored diplomatic channels, and destroyed 12 alien vessels." Admiral Stone picked up a data pad from her desk. "The Galactic Council is demanding your immediate extradition for war crimes." Behind the Admiral, large view screens showed the aftermath of the Kalara battle. The rescued Kelani survivors were being treated in human medical facilities. Their testimonies about Vorthic experiments had been broadcast across the galaxy, causing uproar among dozens of species. "Admiral," Jake said quietly, "have you read the intelligence reports from the Vorthic flagship?" Admiral Stone's expression softened slightly. "I have. The evidence of galactic complicity in the Vorthic operations is disturbing, but that doesn't excuse your actions." Dr. Ryan Torres entered the room carrying a medical tablet. He had been working with the Kelani survivors for weeks, documenting their injuries and treating their trauma. "Admiral, with respect, you need to see the medical records from the Vorthic ships." "Doctor, this is a military disciplinary hearing, Admiral." Stone replied. "Yes, ma'am. And as the chief medical officer who treated the victims, I have a duty to report what I found." Torres activated his tablet, and holographic images appeared above the conference table. The Vorthic were not just conducting experiments. They were torturing children for pleasure. The images showed medical scans of young Kelani who had been subjected to procedures that served no scientific purpose. They had been hurt simply because their captors enjoyed causing pain. Admiral Stone studied the evidence with growing horror. "My God, how many? Over 3,000 children on the ships we captured. Most of them won't survive their injuries." Torres's voice was steady, but his hands shook with suppressed rage. "Admiral, what Captain Morrison did wasn't just right. It was necessary." The door to the conference room opened, and Communications Officer Kate Sullivan entered with a priority message. "Admiral, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this immediately." Kate activated the main view screen, which showed a news broadcast from the Altarian Republic. The alien news anchor spoke in musical tones as the translation system converted her words to English. "The Altarian government today announced the suspension of all trade agreements with the Vorthak Dominion, following the release of shocking evidence about their harvesting operations. Prime Minister Valtara called the Vorthic methods barbaric, and announced that the Republic will no longer purchase biological research data from any source." Similar reports came in from across the galaxy. The Centauri Federation had frozen Vorthic assets. The Rigel Collective had expelled Vorthic diplomats. Even species that had never heard of humans were condemning the torture operations. "It's happening all across the galaxy, Admiral," Kate explained. "The evidence we downloaded from the flagship is spreading through every communication network. Species that have been buying Vorthic research are being forced to admit their complicity." "Admiral." Stone sat back in her chair, processing the information. "What about the Galactic Council's demand for extradition?" Engineer Samantha Brooks entered the room with a grin on her face. "About that, Admiral, I think you should know that 17 species have formally withdrawn from the Galactic Council in the past week. They're forming something they're calling the Liberation Alliance." "The Liberation Alliance?" "Yes, ma'am. species that believe in taking direct action against oppression instead of hiding behind diplomatic protocols. Brooks pulled up a star, chart showing the locations of the Allied worlds. They want Earth to lead the alliance. Jake looked at the star chart with surprise. Lead it? We just joined the galactic community 3 years ago. That's exactly why they want us to lead, Kate added. We're the only species that responded to the Kelani distress call. We're the only ones who are willing to fight monsters instead of negotiating with them. Admiral Stone stood up and walked to the window overlooking Earth's orbital shipyards. Below them, construction crews were working around the clock, building new vessels. But these were not the exploration ships that Earth had been producing for peaceful contact with alien species. Admiral, Jake said, what are those ships? Warships, Captain. Based on the designs your crew developed during the Kalara battle. Admiral Stone turned back to face him. It seems the galaxy has decided that sometimes the only way to deal with monsters is to fight fire with fire. The door opened again, and Commander Lisa Wang entered with a group of alien delegates. Jake recognized them as Kelani survivors who had been rescued from the Vorthic ships. The lead Kelani, an elderly female named Serinda, approached Jake with slow, careful steps. Her species communicated through both words and gentle touches, and she placed her 6-fingered hand on Jake's arm. Captain Morrison, she said through the translation system, my people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You saved our children when no one else would act. Jake felt uncomfortable with the praise. We just did what was right. Yes, Serinda replied. You did what was right when others chose what was easy. The Kelani Council has voted unanimously to join the Liberation Alliance. We offer our medical technology and our gratitude to the human cause. Over the following hours, more alien delegates arrived at Earth Station Alpha. Representatives from dozens of species came to meet the humans who had fought the Vorthic. Many brought stories of their own encounters with the Dominion's harvesting. Fleet's Admiral Stone called Jake aside during a break in the meetings. Captain, I have orders from Earth Command. You're being promoted to Admiral and given command of the new Liberation Fleet. Jake stared at her in shock. Admiral, I disobeyed. Orders. I started an interstellar incident. You saved innocent lives and exposed galactic corruption. Admiral Stone replied. More importantly, you showed the galaxy that humans don't negotiate with monsters. We eliminate them. The view screen activated, showing a live feed from the Kalara system, where once there had been burning cities and Vorthic harvesting ships. Now there were human medical vessels and construction crews. The planet was healing, and its people were free. The Kelani have named their new capital city Morrison, Admiral Stone said with a slight smile. They want to make sure their children never forget who came to help when they called for aid. Jake watched the reconstruction efforts on Kalara Prime. In orbit around the planet, he could see new ships being built. They bore the markings of the Liberation Alliance, a coalition of species dedicated to protecting the innocent and fighting oppression wherever they found it. Admiral, Jake said quietly, what about the rest of the Vorthic Dominion? Supreme. Commander Zithik said they have hundreds of fleets. Then we'll build thousands of ships, Admiral Stone replied. The galaxy wanted Deathworlders in their community. Now they're going to learn what that really means. On the view screen, the first ships of the Liberation Fleet launched from Earth's shipyards. They were painted black with red markings, and their hulls bore names like Vengeance, Retribution, and Justice. These were not exploration vessels or diplomatic ships, that they were warships, built by a species that had learned to fight monsters on their own death world. And they carried a simple message to anyone who would harm the innocent. Humans had heard the cry for help, and they had brought fire instead of mercy. The galaxy would never be the same. As Jake prepared to take command of his new fleet, he recorded, One final message to be broadcast across all inhabited systems. This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Liberation Alliance. To those who prey on the innocent, who torture the helpless, who profit from suffering, we are coming. We don't negotiate with monsters. We don't make deals with evil. We bring fire, and we burn away everything that threatens those who cannot protect themselves. The age of galactic diplomacy was over. The age of Deathworld justice had begun.